So welcome. My name's Jason. This is Against the Stream, Wednesday night. So I just wanted we're probably going to have, there's a couple people logging in now. Hello. We live stream on Facebook and Instagram because, it's 2020 and I guess that's what you're supposed to do. And it's wonderful because it allows people who can't make it here or drive across town or people in Alaska to be able to connect with us. And so we're appreciative of that. So anyway, welcome. Anyone here for the first time or new? Great. Welcome. Glad you're here. Yeah. So we have a few groups here, Mondays and Wednesdays. And then if you're involved in refuge recovery, there's Tuesday and Saturday. Thursday mornings. Yeah. All of the different, we have some day-longs here, and there's different things that happen at our center. So you're welcome to check out the website and come as often as you'd like. So we'll just take a few minutes actually and just kind of settle in. I'm going to skip the introductions tonight. I feel like we're a pretty small group and I'm glad you guys are here, and hopefully you can speak to someone by the end of the night or at the end of the night. Just, say hi. If you've been here a while, say hi to the people that are new. So we're gonna sit for a little bit and just kind of get grounded, settle in. And then I'm going to talk for a bit about the heart practices and the particular practice that we're going to work on tonight, which is, it's called equanimity, or sometimes someone call it balance, emotional balance. And so we'll talk more about that in a bit. And then we'll end with a meditation in that vein. But just to kind of settle in, so, finding a posture that's workable, that's sustainable, where you can be relaxed and alert. It's a good idea to have the back be upright, but not rigid. Sometimes I like to just give my head a little shake. No, my mind's not going to wander off. A little nod, yes. Yes, I'm going to stay connected to the breath and body for every moment. And then just allow the chin to tuck in slightly. Sometimes that's useful because it just relieves some of the tension in the first vertebra. And then just settling in. Arriving here. Opening to the comings and goings of sound. If you can, just allowing the comings and goings of sound to be in the background of your attention. Perhaps aiming the attention on this experience of breathing. Tip of the nose or rise and fall of the belly. Oftentimes the body will arrive somewhere before the mind. Just to take this opportunity perhaps with the in-breath, or the out breath, just silently saying the word here. Relaxing into each new breath, observing what arises in the heart and the mind, and allowing whatever arises to stay for a time and pass away. We're not trying to shut anything out. We're not trying to stop the mind from thinking. Just here, this sitting, breathing body. So hopefully that was useful. I find it useful. And so I'm going to talk for a bit about the Brahmaviharas, or the heart practices. I've been moving through for the last several weeks. Actually, Noah and I have been, we're kind of on the same track. I'm not exactly sure how that happened, but we got on the same track where, so, this week I'm talking about equanimity, and next week, maybe Noah will be talking about equanimity. So whether you're here on Monday or Wednesday, you're at least going to hear about it. So equanimity is, it's a really key factor in all of Buddhism. And the sublime states, or these heart practices, are thought to be, and I actually think of them as really we say heart, but really what we're saying is psychological practices. Because from the Buddhist perspective, there's this one word, the word is chitta, and chitta means heart-mind. So it's actually not different. In Thailand, there's this, I trained in Thailand for some years, and there's this saying, sabai sabai, which means like same, but different. And that's kind of the way I view this word chitta. It's like same, but different. Like we're talking about emotionality, but we're also talking about psychological states. Now, if you think about the qualities of compassion, that it's not just a psychological state, it's actually a felt sense. So that's another way in which we kind of both differentiate and connect, talk about this, kind of the same things, but in different ways. And that's what a lot of Buddhism is. Even if, we're talking about wisdom practices or insight practices, which primarily have to do with the mind, calming the mind, concentrating the mind, opening the mind, like this kind of thing. We're also talking about the heart practices, because what is the result of a calm mind, but generally an open heart? So the aim is, it's the same no matter which kind of direction we take known as Theravada Buddhism, or insight practice sometimes, or sometimes it's also called Vipassana. There's all these different words, you know what I mean? And Buddhism gets weird because there's, especially here in America, because there's so many different kinds of Buddhism. There's like Japanese Buddhism, and then within Japanese Buddhism, there's like 4 kinds of Japanese Buddhism. And then there's Tibetan Buddhism, and then there's Mahayana and Korean, and, the Cha and Zen, and there's all different kinds, right? So sometimes people talk about Buddhism, and it's like they think they're talking about the same thing. And ultimately, we are talking about the same thing. Yet there's differences within those. And so I think that sometimes people get confused. And it's okay. It's okay to be confused. We're all kind of confused anyway. I mean, that's usually why we come to practice. There's some kind of confusion happening. So just to kind of say, this chitta, this heart mind, is actually found within just about every aspect of Buddhism, this understanding. Okay, so the practices that I've been working with thus far in regards to the heart practices, we started with what's called metta. Metta is often translated as loving kindness. I really think of it as positive regard or friendliness, kindness. And this is often what I call the foundation. We're kind of laying a foundation of general open-heartedness or kindness. And this tends to be the antidote to what would be hatred or aversion. So then, going with this kind of the foundation analogy, we can move up into what's called the floor of like the house that we're building, right? This new house that we're going to inhabit, known as the sublime states. This would be forgiveness practice. This kind of, once we're leveling the playing field with loving kindness, we're maybe going to look at some forgiveness, maybe developing forgiveness for ourselves, developing forgiveness for others, specifically people that we've done harm to or caused harm to, which pretty much all of us have done that. I mean, our goal maybe is to not cause harm, but I don't think we can really help it at this point, right? We can do the best we can, yet inevitably some people are still going to be harmed by our thoughts or words or actions. And so this idea of forgiveness when we do, make mistakes or act unwisely or unskillfully, is a way of healing that process. Maybe working with resentment. So then we have compassion, which is the appropriate response to suffering when we're experiencing suffering in our lives, or we're experiencing suffering in the world or in other people's lives. The appropriate response is always compassion. It's always compassion. And I think that's another place we get confused. Sometimes when we feel suffering or we experience suffering, what do? We cling around it. We push it away. There's like this aggression sometimes. Like, I don't want to experience this, get away. Or your suffering is too much, get away. So there's some aversion that can happen. And so compassion is like really a leaning towards without trying to fix or take on. It's very important to realize that we can have boundaries along with compassion. So then moving into, where we're opening to the suffering of our own suffering or the suffering of others with appreciative joy or selfless joy, we're actually opening to the good, taking in the good. So these are all practices that we've been going over. And this idea of taking in the good is also like about having gratitude and developing gratitude for ourselves and possibly gratitude for others, or taking in the good of others' good fortune, success. So that was last week. Last week I was talking about this appreciative joy, or sometimes I call it selfless joy, which is, the antidote to what we consider envy or jealousy. And Noah and I had a little discussion about that here, and then we actually continued that on and Googled some stuff and found, some of the differences between jealousy and envy. And what we really landed with in this discussion is jealousy is attachment. So if you think about if I'm jealous of someone else taking something that is mine, or or a possession. So there's some attachment. And then envy tends to be this kind of coveting of what somebody else has, and whether that's, property or prestige. So envy is craving. Simply put, right, from this Buddhist perspective, envy is craving. And when we experience envy as a craving, one of the ways to work with that is through appreciative joy, through, may you continue to be successful. May your success grow. May your good fortune continue. Like these kind of shifts in our perception go from this kind of craving to, I just kind of think about it as like an open-handed, like acceptance. Same with jealousy. So the last thing to say about these, all of these states, as a whole, they're thought to be, or they're said to be excellent or sublime, because from a Buddhist perspective, they are the right or ideal way of conduct towards ourselves or others. These attitudes are considered the answer to all conflict and or situations arising from social contact. So from the Buddhist perspective, these heart practices are a way to stay connected, even among discord, to find healing even among pain, right? So this kind of, binding or bonding versus the separation. So I like to think of them that way. That quote I just read is from Nyanaponika, who is a Sri Lankan monk, actually a German-born Sri Lankan monk who was very scholarly and is like along the same line, along the same lineage as Bhikkhu Bodhi, who's also very well known for his scholarliness, which I'm not a very scholarly person, but I can read and I can practice. Yeah. So speaking about equanimity, so there's a few different ways to talk about equanimity. The Pali word is upekkha, and upekkha can be translated in a bunch of different ways. Sometimes people think of it as kind of this wise discernment, this discerning a thing with a wise view. Also, equanimity can be translated or found actually within the wisdom teaching, so within the Eightfold Path. It's also thought to be like the goal is to see clearly, and to develop wisdom. So equanimity is this in the contemplation and wisdom practices. And then it's also considered one, the final, or in my analogy of the building of the house, it's the roof of the heart practices. Kind of, actually, what does a roof do? Well, it protects. It's serving as protection for everything else. Right? So if you think about, we have loving kindness as a foundation and we have equanimity as a roof, then hopefully there's peace happening within that dwelling, right? So within our own hearts and minds. So one of the main ways equanimity is thought of as a way to develop is that it is a protection, and it's considered a protection for what's called the 8 worldly winds, which is the vicissitudes of life, the shit that goes down, right? So what happens when there's this huge storm or tornado and it's threatening to tear down our house, right? So in life, how do we experience that? Well, we experience that as gain and loss. We experience that as fame or ill repute. We experience that as praise or blame. We experience that as pleasure or pain. These are considered the 8 worldly winds. So we can experience gain. And when we experience gain, or lack of equanimity would be like, this is going to last forever. Like the stock market, or you get this killer job, or whatever it is, right? Could be the best relationship, and you're thinking, yes, this is it. And then there's the loss, and maybe it's lost there, or maybe there's loss somewhere else, which it feels like it's never going to end, right? Loss of a loved one, loss of a relationship, loss of a job can weigh super heavy on us. For some, and depending on who we are, some people have a really hard time even getting out of that kind of a spiral. So equanimity takes a balanced view, and to appreciate the gains without attaching to it, because it could be otherwise, and to see the loss, but also recognize the impermanent nature of everything that arises, passes away. So this is a way of talking about equanimity is the knowing, the seeing clearly that which is true, which that there is gain and there is loss, and both things will happen. That's part of what we're going to go through. And how do we deal with that? How do we approach that and stay open? So that's kind of considered that's the wise view. That's the kind of the wisdom aspect of equanimity. And then there's some practical aspects, some practice aspects, which we'll kind of move into in a little bit. But just to kind of speak about the heart aspect of equanimity. Sometimes I like to call the word equanimity it's kind of a weird word, and Pali words are even more weird, right? So I like to think of cultivating emotional balance, because what are we actually trying to do here? Cultivate emotional balance. And there's been a whole new kind of Buddhist psychological or even secular mindfulness ways of speaking about this idea of cultivating emotional balance. But if you ask me, which you're not, but I'm going to tell you anyway, that really is the whole goal of what we're doing here. We're trying to cultivate emotional balance, where we can move with the vicissitudes, with mindfulness, in this development of mindfulness, move with the praises and the gains, the fame and the ill repute. If you've ever maybe had a job and someone was, acknowledging you one day, praising you one day, right? And then blaming you the next day, or the next week or the next month. I've definitely had that, so how do we deal with that without feeling crushed or pissed, right? So this is some of the wisdom response. So the heart response is basically also, it takes in this understanding of karma. Right? So what is karma? I don't know I think sometimes it's translated, it's not even translated, it's just like talked about as what comes around goes around, right? It's a pretty simplistic view, and it kind of it's also somewhat narrow. Really, the word karma means action. And so this understanding of karma is that there is a karmic momentum that's playing itself out. And equanimity holds that to be true, sees that there is a karmic momentum. And if you think about karma, is like, you don't have to believe whether there's karma or not. Just like you don't have to believe whether there's gravity. There just is gravity, right? That's actually a lot heavier than I thought it was going to be because of gravity. So this is, kind of just another view, another way to kind of think about. Okay, so if there is karma and karma is action and there's this momentum that's playing itself out, one of the ways that the heart practices talk about is that, somebody's actions, my actions, are determining my experience. and my relationship to experience is determining whether I'm going to suffer or be free from suffering. So karma is that kind of understanding of, oh, and there's been times in my life where, quite literally, I've just been holding on, and because the karmic momentum from, perhaps past actions, I haven't always been the most skillful person, and I'm not always the most skillful person now, but I'm way more skillful than I used to be. And it wasn't because the lightning bolt of karma I thought was going to get me. It was really more about I experienced some of the negative karmic results of my own actions, either internally or externally, and then bearing that is really that equanimity is also kind of bearing that, and then also experiencing some of the positive karmic results and not clinging to that, but seeing that it's impermanent, that it arises, that it passes away, but beginning to kind of see that in our lives. Kind of just helps to broaden the view. So cultivating emotional balance or equanimity, so it also looks at all beings impartially, right, as heirs or results of their own actions. So without attachment or aversion. So this is that balance. Sometimes it's talked about as, I guess it's just like wise mind. So, what it says here is the serene neutrality of the one who knows. So this idea of knowing and understanding this aspect of karma. One of my teachers would say when I would be worried about what was happening with somebody else, or I was talking about something that was happening in my own life, or why I was so resentful or angry about a person or a situation. And I would be arguing with one of my teachers, and my teacher would say what, really? If you believe in karma, no one gets away with anything. It's all going to come around. So this idea of what comes around goes around doesn't mean that we're going to wish ill will, but nobody gets out without the experience of karma. And so if we're putting action into the world that is positive, that is useful, then hopefully we're going to be planting those seeds and then growing those fruits. So sometimes they call it the karmic fruit. So another one of our teachers, Ajahn Amaro, talks about equanimity as a perfect, unshakable balance of mind rooted in insight. So a perfect, unshakable balance of mind rooted in insight. So just think about what that might be like for you. What would it be like to be unshakable based on whatever the worldly winds are, and rooted in this insight of knowing, of seeing clearly. So I think that this is a lot of what, when people talk about the qualities of the Buddha, that really what they're saying, what they're describing is that this is kind of how the dude was, right? After he'd become awake, when he was practicing, it's not that he didn't get, the worldly winds weren't still happening for him. They were. People tried to kill the Buddha. There's this one story where the Brahmins, who were the ruling class, the rich, the 1%, that's what we'll call them, were trying to discredit the Buddha, who was an ascetic monk, and so they paid a woman to wear a carved wooden belly, like a fake pregnancy belly, and go to a group of people, however many, 80, 100 people, and stand up and say, the Buddha got me pregnant, right? And then people were there was this shake, that happened, right? So they were trying to discredit the Buddha. And, the Buddha just held in a knowing. He wasn't shooken by that because he knew the integrity of his actions. And over a very short period of time, actually, the woman just kind of broke down and then said, look, the jackass has tried, paid me, to try to discredit you. And then the woman in the story, the Buddha gave forgiveness and invited this woman to join the Sangha, because she was confused and lost. And, so that's part of the process. So another way of talking about the cultivating emotional balance is also just like we've talked about with the other heart practices, is about talking about its opposite. So one of the things that I like about equanimity is that equanimity, for me, it has allowed me to open to more compassion for not only myself, but for others. And because it gives me that balance of not feeling overwhelmed. Because I remember when I first started doing compassion practice, and I was, I had kind of turned away from my suffering and the suffering of the world I had been overwhelmed by it when I was like 8, I was like, yeah, this is way too much. Numb it out, shut it off, find different ways, whatever those ways were. Being angry, smoking weed, drinking to blackout, whatever. We all have different, different strategies. But those were some of my strategies. And then doing this heart practice years later, I started to feel the fear of if I open to compassion, my own compassion, or the compassion of others, I'm going to get overwhelmed again. Right? And so this practice of equanimity is really to say, the Dharma can hold it all. It's big enough. There's actually enough room that we don't need to feel so overwhelmed by it. So that's part of that balanced mind. So what's the opposite? The opposite of this kind of being able to hold all the, vicissitudes or the worldly winds with balanced mind is to either, is to turn away from it, is to shut down, to maybe become insensitive or desensitized, indifferent, apathetic. And a lot of times, this is when people talk about you hear about people being stoic, right? Sometimes being stoic can be taken to be apathetic or indifferent. And I actually think that this is it's called the near enemy to equanimity, because in some ways there can be this, if we're not truly living in equanimity, which takes a very long time and is extremely hard to do. Think about the fully enlightened Buddha. Okay. Hardcore practice for a long period of time, able to sit with, these vicissitudes, right? These kinds of challenges, and be unshakable in his mind, in his heart. So, you can think about that as that's an ideal. What I have seen that happens is particularly when people use meditation practice as a bypass, what we call a spiritual bypass, then they develop a kind of a cold indifference where there's a stoicism of it just doesn't bother me anymore. It's all, and this can actually lead to nihilism. This kind of, why should any of this matter? So, the equanimity is actually engaging instead of just being indifferent or being apathetic. And it actually is something that we can just feel. We have to feel it. It's not I can be looking, I can look like I'm being equanimous, but really I just don't give a shit. Right? So equanimity to me is giving a shit without being totally overwhelmed by it. You know? Any thoughts or questions? Yes.
Is being having a compassion the regarding the things that may cause you to be indifferent or stoic is to have compassion at that point, the pathway towards equanimity rather am I
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, no, and yes, you're right. I mean, as far as the way that I was kind of am talking about it, that equanimity gives the balance so that we're not overwhelmed by compassion. Like when we open to the suffering of the world, we're not overwhelmed by it, but we're still engaging with it. So compassion says, let's continue to engage. And so does loving kindness. Loving kindness, if we're just loving, we're developing tons of loving kindness without any wisdom of equanimity, then we're just going to be kind of in this blissed out mode as a way of avoiding the difficulty, right? So the balanced heart mind says, yes, being friendly, being kind, being open to positive regard, and, shit's still going to suck sometimes. It's not like shit doesn't suck. Right? So it's that kind of a balance. Yeah. So yes, turning toward, like if we start to feel the indifference, the coldness of indifference, then yes, perhaps shifting to practicing more compassion would be what's talked about as skillful means, like the right thing to do. Yeah. The antidote. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you sort of catch yourself when you're falling either into nihilism on one extreme or emotional imbalance on the other extreme?
How do you catch?
Like, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, what immediately comes to mind is developing more mindfulness. That mindfulness is what is the tool that's helping us to see clearly what's happening, right? And so if we're attuned with mindfulness, and we're also practicing, whether it's loving kindness or compassion or whatever it is, then we're going to hopefully see if we're off, right? If we're not in the middle path, but we're maybe leaning a little bit more towards like emotional imbalance, or leaning more towards indifference, or kind of stoicism, right? So, but that's a challenge. So I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, and it, sometimes I think I'm trying to think for myself. Yeah, for myself, I've totally lost my shit, and then then realized, oh, I totally lost my shit, and came back, right? Coming back to what I know is the practice. So mindfulness of, having lost my shit, which then helps me regain balance. Here's one of the ways that I like to think about it. We all have a compass, and everyone on this planet has a compass, and that compass is pointing hopefully true north, peace and ease, and what happens is that as life, just like we have a heading, we're going towards nibbana, awakening, freedom from suffering, and we're going to get off course, and so we have to course correct. And when you're out in the middle of the ocean, or when you're lost in the the storm of our emotional kind of situations or life's problems, sometimes we lose track. So equanimity is this kind of steadiness of staying the course, right? Mindfulness says, oh, we're off course, and let's come back. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So make sure I'm getting all of my. So here's another example of maybe what you were just asking. So looking at the world around us, and looking into our own hearts, we see clearly how difficult it is to obtain and maintain this balance of mind. So yes, we're going to be off course. Yes, we're going to shift. And so mindfulness helps us to see that. And equanimity helps us to reconnect with, our goal, which is peace and ease. It's one of the reasons that I actually really love this practice. Not just equanimity practice, but Buddhism in general. Because this style of Buddhism, and I'm not going to diss too much on other styles, but this style of Buddhism, meaning that what we practice here is the Thai forest tradition, which was thought to be kind of the rebellious path. It's also thought to be the narrow path. Because what it does is it reveals the stark reality of our everyday mind. It's not about avoiding it. It's not about getting into some blissful state. Sorry, that's actually not helpful. It can be temporarily relieving. Like if I took 3 hits of acid, I would forget a lot of the shit that's going on. But tomorrow or 3 days from now, depending on how good the acid was, I would still be left with those. And I might even have a few other problems added to it. Right? So this avoidance strategy, and this I think is not necessarily other forms of Buddhism, but I do think that it can be found in some of the New Age talk that happens. Some of this finding your bliss talk. That it seems super appealing. Because it's like, I want to find my bliss. But at what expense? And are we really gaining wisdom from that? And is there lasting peace and ease? Where what this form of Buddhism is saying is like, can we see it all? Can we open to it all? The 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows, and hold it with some care, and hold it with some ease. This is really some life skill shit, you know what I mean? Yeah. All right, let's see what else. Insensitive, indifference, apathy. Oh, so here's a saying. It's a quote from the Buddha, and this is in the suttas, what are thought of to be the teachings. It's in the Udana Sutta. So it says this. For one who clings, motion exists, but for one who clings not, there is no motion. Where no motion is, there is stillness. Where stillness is, there is no craving. Where no craving is, there is neither coming nor going. Where no coming nor going is, there is neither arising nor passing away. Where neither arising nor passing away is, there is neither this world nor the world beyond, nor the state in between. This, verily, is the end of suffering. So sometimes this is called causality, or this-that conditionality. If we're continuing to practice to see clearly and to have a balanced heart-mind, then when the vicissitudes come, there's not going to be a lot of motion. There's going to be stillness. Yeah. Thoughts? Questions? We're going to practice in a few minutes. Yeah.
Question about craving. Trying to figure out when does it become problematic and when is it just a normal part of human experience. For example, I want to get another motorcycle. I need one? Not really. I think about it. There's some craving in there. How do you kind of tease out when it becomes problematic When is it just a desire for something that you love or want to feel?
So I'll just kind of paraphrase for people that maybe couldn't hear you, but this idea of craving, and when is craving just like a natural kind of experience, like desire. Desire gets a bad rap, right? But it's when there's desire and that desire turns to craving, and that craving turns to, attachment or into some of the other hindrances, right? Or repetitive craving that then takes us off balance. So from the Buddhist perspective, there's this understanding of desire, that there is what's called skillful desire and unskillful desire. So skillful desire, like desire to become awakened, craving to become free from suffering, can be skillful, lead to skillful means, has skillful results, right? Buying another motorcycle, desire. So the question would be skillful or unskillful? Well, is it hurting anyone? Hopefully not. Is it going to maybe give you some temporary pleasure that and you can appreciate the temporary pleasure without clinging to it, right? Okay, maybe that is skillful. Does it have skillful results? Perhaps, right? So feeding a wholesome desire can be beneficial. Again, using the discernment, right, or the equanimity to know that motorcycle will, it could crash, or it could break down, or it could end your life, right? Or you might have to sell it, or it might be too expensive to buy. So that's the balancing part. Just to kind of give a little bit of context to your question. At least that's the way I'm thinking about it. Where unwholesome, like I just keep buying motorcycles. I can't stop. I want a new one all the time, and I'm going bankrupt because of it. And I'm going to be a motorcycle salesperson. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy and sell motorcycles, and that's becomes a thing, and becomes maybe an unhealthy obsession, right? And then maybe I'm not, I'm not looking for other work, and then, what I mean? So it could spin into unhealthy, unskillful. So if we look at the results, some would say any craving is attachment, otherwise it wouldn't be craving. It would.
That's why I asked about it. I didn't see a lot of discussion on this. First, I haven't heard about positive. We talk about skillful desires,
right.
Craving, because craving and desire, that's a part of human experience. I'm just wondering, with the Buddhist perspective, do they look at like a cessation of all desire? Is that like nirvana, Buddha state where that's completely gone?
No, I would say, one of the ways I love that Noah kind of translates this is non-attached appreciation. So that it's not craving as much as it is, there's desire, and there's enjoying a thing with non-attachment. So the attachment is there jealousy involved in that attachment? Right? The attachment can be the problem. So sometimes the words like craving, the word craving in Pali means, the word is tanha. Tanha means, like, the best translation is the unquenchable thirst. So if you think of a thirst that is unquenchable, right? And what does that lead to? It leads to negative results. Constantly wanting more, right? And that is a cycle of suffering. But through that cycle of suffering, we actually, without suffering, we wouldn't be motivated to practice, right? So this idea of like, is the end result, or is nibbana free from craving? I don't really know, because I'm not totally free from craving. But what's said is that yes, yeah, it's free from craving. Because craving leads to, rebirth, or craving. And if you think about this psychologically, if we crave and we attach to an idea even the idea of nibbana, craving for, so this is a little bit, I'm going different than what I said a few minutes ago around, there's a wholesome desire for, say, freedom from suffering, right? But that is also balanced with this understanding of karma and that it may not happen in this lifetime, and, can we just do the best we can, right? Yet an unhealthy craving for desire, for, awakening would be like, I'm meditating all the time. It's that addictive behavior that can come from this, right? When it becomes a cycle of addiction, there's mental obsession. There's the phenomenon of, or there's mental obsession, physical compulsion. There's the act or the behavior. Then there's this phenomenon of craving to continue to get whatever the result was of that last behavior or act, right? And then continued behavior leading to what? Negative results or negative consequences. And then that cycle continuing over and over and over again. That would be the cycle of suffering. What's the cycle of freedom? Recognizing from that, either from that moment of craving or from the mental obsession, right? Bringing in mindfulness to see, not maybe renunciation. So maybe it means not buying the motorcycle, or not, sometimes I've seen people that just they get so lost in, craving for nibbana, right, as a bypass, a spiritual bypass, that then they're living in monasteries, and they're going from, one ashram to another ashram, and they're traveling around, and they're, and then 20 years later, where are they in their life? And they're like, oh, I wasted all this time because there wasn't a skillful balance, So I don't know if that's a great, it's a little bit of a rabbit hole, right? So. Question related to this, because I want to do some meditation.
Did you happen to see the movie on Ramdas Becoming Nobody?
I did not.
Okay, so I liked in one, the man who made the movie said what motivated him to start to practice was an overwhelming feeling of an abundance of lack.
Yeah.
And I really liked that phrase. It just stuck out from the whole movie. I was like, yeah, that's it. Abundance of lack.
An overwhelming feeling of an abundance of lack. Yeah.
And that's what drove him to practice. And I
For
thought,
sure.
yeah, that's pretty much it.
Right, right. And I feel like that, the way I call that is a pervasive feeling of dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
That just nothing is quite good enough. No matter, it doesn't matter. I've taken all the drugs, what I mean? And drank all the booze and had a lot of the sex, most of the sex, still dissatisfied. So having done that, and then whatever the thing, I haven't had all the things, but I think the first couple, I was, okay, yeah. It seems to be a dead end, right? Yeah. So this last piece of equanimity, before we get into the practice, is just to say that it's also what the Buddha is calling the middle path. Okay? The middle path is to live in equanimity, is to not be swayed by the extremes or the vicissitudes. Okay. So we're going to turn to the practice. I have a little bit of problem with some of the ways in which this practice gets portrayed, because my favorite, I like to keep my meditation simple. I'm just that way. And one of my teachers would say that Buddhism is simple and deep. Right? I heard someone say recently, 1 inch wide and a mile deep. We don't need to get really confused about a lot of words, because it's so much of it is experiential. So my favorite way of kind of viewing, and we'll move a little bit into some of the other practices, but my way of working with equanimity is actually really just to use a very simple phrase. May I be at ease regardless of the situation. May I be at ease regardless of the situation. Or maybe it's not situation, maybe it's just regardless of what's happening in this life. May I be at ease. May I live with ease. Maybe that's even better. May I live with ease. And then the further phrases that are, so like I said, there's wisdom and compassion. So the further phrases are, all beings are responsible for their own actions. This is the understanding of karma. All beings are responsible for their own actions. And then suffering or happiness is created through one's relationship to experience, not by experience itself. So this is understanding the vicissitudes, right? How do I deal with pain? How do I deal with ill repute? How do I deal with gain? How do I deal with loss? So we'll work with this practice for a while. So finding whatever position, laying down, sitting comfortably, standing up. If you feel like you've been sitting for a while, if you feel like you want to get up and move around and shake it out for a minute, that's okay too. But yeah, be relaxed. Good, so finding that position, just settling in, hearing the bell. So in some way, breathing into this heart space or this place of original goodness, this wholesome desire for happiness and well-being that we all have within us as a birthright. Sometimes people envision a gem of original goodness or Buddha nature within us. Perhaps breathing into your heart space or your center. I'm just thinking about this wholesome intention for happiness, well-being. This emotional balance. beginning to repeat these simple phrases. I like to think about the phrases coming kind of through the mind, and then dropping down into the chest or into the heart space. Kind of like the way the breath moves through the head into the heart. And just very simply repeating the phrase, may I live with ease. Perhaps the word be works better for you. May I be at ease. May I be at ease regardless of the situation. May I live with ease in this life. May I meet the difficulties with a balanced mind. May I be open to the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows of this life. May I be at ease, regardless of the situation. May I meet the challenges or difficulties of this life with a balanced heart, mind. May I continue to recognize that all beings are responsible for their own actions. All beings are responsible for their own actions. Their suffering or happiness is created through their relationship to the experience, not experience itself. I am responsible for my own actions. My happiness or suffering depends on my own actions and not my wishes. My own suffering or happiness is created through my relationship to experience, not experience itself. May I live with ease. Regardless of the situations in life. May I live with ease. Amidst the gain and the loss, amidst the fame and the ill repute. May I live with ease amidst the praise and the blame. May I live with ease amidst the pleasure and the pains of this life. all beings are responsible for their own actions. Their happiness or suffering is dependent upon their actions and not my wishes for them. So for the next few moments, kind of letting go of the words and just seeing if we can rest in this wholesome desire for happiness and well-being. May I have a balanced heart and mind. May I be at ease. So just take a moment and reflect on that practice for yourself. What was that like? Was it challenging? Was it flowed? Was it easy? Did I get lost? Did I say that's never going to happen? Did I get uncomfortable? Just reflecting. There's no wrong way to experience it. Unless you just totally checked out and played on your phone. then that's wrong. And you're going to suffer. Just playing. Kind of. All right, so opening up to any questions, anything you're wondering about? Things that weren't clear? Please.
Sorry. I guess doing the practice just made me think like, okay, so I do this mindfulness, right, to help me stay out of both states into the middle, but what do I do after I'm there? Because I feel like in that practice, I actually felt like I am aware of myself when I'm in those states. It's just like I can't, or I won't, like get myself out of it. And I feel like there are reasons why that is, but I'm not interested in that. I'm more so considering like what are the actions that I could do.
Yeah. I mean, really, I feel like it's different for different people, right? And that's where having a mentor or a therapist or someone that you can trust and you can talk to and so seeing it and then using some skills to shift. One of the ways, like what immediately came to my mind was opposite action. So this idea of like, if my tendency when I'm off balance or out of balance is to, say, harm myself or isolate, I'm going to do the opposite because I want to find balance, right? Or if my tendency, I guess that's about it.
Sorry for asking a personal question.
No, it's totally fine. Totally fine. I'm glad you asked that. Really. I think it's totally an appropriate question. I mean, what do we? Yeah, the nuts and fucking bolts. Like, what do we do? Yeah, mindfulness is all good and well, but then what? Then we're aware of what we're doing, and how do we not do it when we don't want to? When we know that it's like harmful, right? Yeah, and I think it's it's like there's a Zen tradition of like the sharpening of the blade. The samurai sharpens the blade over and over and over so we can begin to refine the mind, so we can see where's the tendency. Oh, I have a tendency to go towards unhealthy states. Maybe we can even be, as we're getting more mindful or more concentrated or more, more of this kind of awareness practice, we can actually maybe begin to see what are the preconditions for when our tendency is to go that direction, particularly towards unhealthy behaviors or unskillful. I like to think that I've gained some of that, but not always. Yeah. I like to think that I got that shit down, but I don't. I'm practicing. Yeah.
For me, I feel like a lot of the time I'm aware of, like I'm about to enter this bad state, or I'm there and I even know what to do, but it's really hard to do it sometimes. Like just like take that, whatever, the opposite action or, get like, that's where I get stuck.
Yeah. And thus suffering.
And that's really so crazy.
Yeah. It is. And we do it. And we do it repeatedly. And we do it repeatedly without even being aware of it. So the fact that you're fucking aware of it is a step up. And that's the thing, is like, if we're like, we don't even know what we don't know. I don't know what I don't know. But if I know something, if I have awareness is the gateway to healing. Without it, so now you know, I can do something different, but I'm not going to. I'm choosing not to. Right?
Yeah. I
Okay.
know. Which is almost sometimes, it's like a more painful transitional place to be.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of not knowing. Ignorance is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that's right.
so yeah, it is this uncomfortable place to be.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think we do that? Like, why do you think we know the right thing to do, and we know this is not the right thing to do, but you do it anyway?
I think that we have built a tolerance to our suffering over years of suffering, of causing suffering for ourselves. I mean, if you think about it, and I did this when we talked about karuna and we did compassion practice, right? So one of the first steps is to see clearly that I cause my own suffering. And so I cause my own suffering. So I did a repeated phrase practice a few weeks ago. I cause my own suffering by, and then naming it. I cause my own suffering by isolating. I cause my own suffering by wallowing in depression. I cause my own suffering by, the tyrant, the critical voice that the negative talk, I cause my own suffering, so on and so forth. Right? One of my teachers, I had a similar question once. One of my teachers said, we need to develop an intolerance to our own suffering. To be motivated to do something fucking different, right? But on the way there, continue to practice. Heart practices are good. They're helpful. All of these practices are leading to liberation. Liberation from suffering. That's the goal. That's why we're here. So yeah. I think we've become really accustomed. And some people, perhaps myself at some point, I was kind of addicted to my suffering. Like I was like, I know what this is like. It's familiar, it's predictable, it's safe, and it's fucking painful. Oh yeah, I'll just keep doing this. Because what's unfamiliar, what's unpredictable, what feels unsafe at first is liberating. That's my best guess. Probably not my best guess, but it's the guess I have right now. Yeah. Yeah, I think we're all different, Yes.
I was thinking, I had a situation that happened to me in the last few days, and it had to do with a work situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I found after coming here for a while, I've really been able to work through some personal things, family things, betrayal things. And with all of these practices kind of in the comfort of my home and, in that safer space.
Mm-hmm.
But a work environment is so different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was high pressure, high stakes, deadlines, no wiggle room. And I was dependent on a team member helping me with a project. And long story short, there was a huge lack of communication, and a proposal or whatever it was went out last minute. And it made me insane because I had other people I had to answer to, and I had, I'm a perfectionist and all of that. But the other person on the other end, who's half my age, and I know she was suffering because of the pressure that I was under, that she was under.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've noticed is I went to that place, that bad place. I was like, I was insane. And I hadn't felt that way for like almost a year. And so it's been a real interesting 24 hours of like, first of all, this is so unhealthy because, I have a tendency to have heart issues. So it's like, this is not good. And I didn't do the contrary action, which I should have, which is I should have just taken a walk, gone outside, gotten some fresh air, and I just stayed in it. And it felt familiar, and it almost felt like good in a way to be like, visceral. But now I'm having a lot of like regret, and it's hard. It's hard. I want to apologize to her. I want to, I think I did some harm.
So there's another teaching that I'll go briefly. It's called Hari and Opata, the great guardians of the world. Hari and Opata, guilt, remorse. What do we do? What's the action? Forgiveness. Awareness, feeling regret, feeling remorse. This is karmic momentum. This is karma, the playing out, whether it's during or after. Right? And then what's the skillful means? What's the appropriate response? Well, the awareness of it, the feeling what you're doing now, and then some forgiveness. But don't rush to forgiveness, right? Allow, and do that as a practice within. The compassion first to get in touch with that suffering. And then the forgiveness. Because guilt and remorse is only useful in the beginning. And where we get fucked is we hold on to it. And it's like, I have to stay guilty. I have to remember as a penance, right? This is some of our Western religious, maybe, upbringing. So we need to end. But thank you for sharing that. And keep coming back. It works. All right. Okay, we have like another minute.
Sure. So I feel like a lot of what you said and then a lot of what I try to practice is balance in a simplified way. So a lot of what you said goes back to balance. And so, and when I try to tackle something that I'm working on or a thought or anything like that, I try to go at it a day at a time. So like if I'm struggling with a work something or other, I go into it going, this is what I want out of this situation. This is where I would find balance, but I'm going to mess up and that's okay. And I'm going to try again tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Do you think do you have any thoughts on, is that kind of like making excuses for yourself or is that moving towards balance, do you think?
What do you think?
I guess to me, I think it's moving towards balance, but I don't know, like, for example, I think it's best when you give an example. So like something that you can relate to, I can relate to the stress at work. And I think that sometimes I'm unforgiving to other coworkers or, unfriendly maybe, or short, or anything like that. So every day I think, okay, well, who do I want to be? I want to be someone that moves with ease in any situation. And that obviously hit me when you said that repeatedly today. So trying to move in with ease, knowing that it's possible to fail or succeed, but not relishing in either, would be where I would consider balance and just a moving meditation almost.
Yeah. That's the practice. You just said it. That's the repeated phrase, may I be at ease. May I approach the difficulties of my work today with ease and comfort. the challenges, difficulties, whatever it is, right? And then, when we blow it, because we will, and we're going to get reactive, and we're going to fail, and we're going to fall on our face, and we're going to, it's grimy sometimes, right? Then we have some compassion for that. Oh yeah, I'm human too, right? The Buddha was totally human. Dude kind of got pissed off sometimes in enlightenment, right? Actually, it's talked about. So it's like, that's what we do here. We humanize. The Buddha was not a god. Matter of fact, he didn't even want statues of him. He was like, no one make a statue of me ever. I'm not the point. The Dharma is the point. 300 years after the dude died, people were like, let's make some statues of this guy, right? And sell them on eBay. So my point is, right, that we just do the best we can. Yeah. I like what you said, and I don't think it's lying to yourself or copping out or anything like that. I think we just do the best we can without letting go of this, like, I have to be perfect and never screw up, never make a mistake, be like a statue. Is that actually being kind to ourselves? No. We need to end. I have some announcements to make. We actually finally got some printed up. This is amazing. Donations. We're run on donation here. There are bowls. We can take some Venmo or some credit cards if you want to use a card. You can Venmo donations at Against the Stream Meditation. And there's also, we do like a monthly supporter thing, so you can do a monthly support if you want. That would help us have a steady income, because we're trying to have balance here, where we're not charging people for the classes and what we have here, but yet we need to be able to cover the bills, right? And you can find out about that on againstthestream.com. There's a 4 Foundations of Mindfulness Day Long coming up March 7th. And Ajahn Chah Lineage Study and Practice Group, which I'm actually going to be doing. I'm just super interested. Ajahn Chah is the lineage holder of our practice. So the Thai forest rebel that started kind of this whole thing. So we'll be going over some, it'll be like it's a monthly practice, study and practice group from March 22nd through June 28th. And it's going to be every month on a Sunday. There's a Memorial Day retreat. That's a weekend retreat. You can find out more about that at againstthestreammeditation.com. Meditation Weekly, or Meditation Weekend in North Carolina. Oh, on March 16th, one of our, Morgan, who is one of our members who has been with us for a really long time and went to study this like Japanese tea ceremony and has like been infusing meditation practice with this like this art and movement. So is doing on March 16th, is doing a tea ceremony here, intimate tea ceremony. And it says there's a couple spots left. So you can probably find out more about that on againstthestream.com. All right.
That's a Monday, so will that be in place of the meditation?
It's before.
It's before. So yeah.
Gotcha.
So find out about it on the
Thank you.
on the Against the Stream to find out more about it. But yeah, no, it's not what that'll be before. And that's a lot of announcements. But I'm going to be with ease and balance the announcements. May any goodness that comes from our practice, may this goodness be shared with all beings everywhere. We do this practice not only for our own awakening, for our own liberation, but for the liberation of all beings. May all beings experience the freedom from suffering. May we all be free.